Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 22-year-old competitive boulderer from Canada, currently living near Frankfurt, Germany. Welcome back to the COMPCLIMB training series, where I record all of my training, provide in-depth analysis of every session, and just chat about climbing with an emphasis on competition. Today we have our workout and endurance on the agenda for training, and we're starting with our workout in the morning here at Boulderhaus. And if you're interested in sort of just like the title of the video and sort of just want to hear about my skin history and like sort of my advice for from my personal experience of like just managing my skin and sort of my skin routine, you can check out the timestamps in the video and fast forward to the second half of the video, and I'm going to talk about it while we're doing our endurance. But for now, we're doing our workout, and like I've mentioned, you know, in the past few episodes that we've done our workout, I'm going to start including some clips of old boulders to talk about, just because we've been doing the workout, the same workout for this whole training cycle, and once you've seen the exercises and after you've sort of seen these exercises introduced and you've heard my philosophy behind it, it can be tedious to watch. And so if you're like interested, if you're like a new viewer and you want to sort of have these exercises that I do in all my workouts be introduced, you can check out like, you know, just check out like a couple episodes ago, like from our workouts, and I'll talk about them more. But for now, we're going to talk about some climbs that I have lined up for today. And so I got one in particular that's going to be a good tip of the day, and that's the one that you're seeing on the screen here. So like I said, we won't really be getting a tip of the day from our day of training, so I have to come up with one from the archives so that I can talk about it, because you know I'm not going to get a tip of the day from just an endurance and a workout. So what I do is I like go through my archives and I like look for something like interesting that I can talk about, and it's cool too because I can really find like rare instances of tips of the days that won't necessarily come up all the time. And like for example, today's tip of the day is like kind of like one that I don't do a whole lot. And so it's good that I can go find like a rare example of it that I've already done in the past. So anyway, let's talk about it. I do this actually 2 times on this boulder with my right hand, and it's a pinching technique. So I do it once on this red hold that I'm matching here. First of all, this boulder is like super epic. This is a boulder from my home gym, Climbers Rock. It's also the title sponsor of the COMPCLIMB series. It's Matty and I's home gym near Toronto, and it's the best climbing facility in the Toronto area. And we have their link in the description for more information. Without their support, the series would not be possible. So yeah, this is like, I don't know, from a couple of years ago at CR, a boulder that our head setter Jamie set, and it's super cool. And it features this grip position that I do twice on the boulder. So I do it on the red hold and then I do it on the flat hold zone. And what I do is I pinch the hold and I sort of tilt my thumb like this rather than doing a normal pinch like this. And the logic behind this is that there are some sort of funky pinches that are like shapen really weirdly to the point where you can't like, it's more potent on this sort of flat hold, like the zone hold, where I could get like, obviously all 4 of my fingers on the sloper quite comfortably, but if I was to stick my thumb there, the thumb isn't very deep. And so it would create this sort of weird thing where if I wanted to get my thumb, I would have to bring my 4 fingers back, and then it's a worse hold. So by sort of bringing my thumb closer to my palm, also I'll pause and say that I'm including a couple other clips of boulders from Climbers Rock, just sort of since that's sort of like the theme. And these next 2 boulders that you can see on the screen are my own boulders that I set. Like my parents actually own this gym. I've mentioned previously, I think I've only mentioned it once actually. So I was able to climb during this, like during lockdown most of the time. But what ended up happening is like I was the only one in the gym, so I had to set myself some boulders. So here are like a couple highlights from my solo lockdown sessions when I had to set myself some boulders. These are like some of my highlights. And so if there's any setters watching the video right now, here's some proof that I can set, and maybe like I'll start seeing if I can guess. I've been talking to Eric a little bit, and he said I could probably set a boulder sometime at Studio Bloc. So here's the proof that I'm not too bad at setting. But yeah, this grip position, it's good for a couple reasons. One, it allows you to sort of like get more surface area with your 4 fingers on a hold like that, where the thumb will usually push your hand out naturally. So by bringing it closer, it allows you to get more surface area with these 4 fingers. And this can also help on like, let's say you have a thumb catch on like a volume or something, that's sort of a long hold, or sort of like a long thumb catch, right? Instead of just getting like a bit of surface area with your thumb, when you were to go to pinch this hold, like just with just the tip of your thumb, by switching your finger to be sort of sideways, you can get actually so much more surface area. Now, this doesn't always work. I find it actually can often feel like a weaker grip position, but because you get more surface area with your thumb, it actually it doesn't feel stronger, but it feels like you can hold the hold better, just because you're just getting more surface area. And I don't really have a name for this technique. I haven't actually heard any other people talk about it or seen any other people do it. This is, obviously, I'm sure I didn't invent this and there are other people doing this, but this is sort of one of the few skills and techniques that I do that I haven't actually seen anybody else do or talked about it with anybody else really, and sort of had anybody else be like, oh yeah, I do that too. Or like oftentimes when I share this technique with other people, they're like, oh, that's interesting. I've never really thought about that. So it's sort of nameless, and maybe you can throw a name for it in the comment. Basically, yeah, it's just like, here's a better idea of it. It's like a sort of straight on grip position, and you just sort of, twist your thumb sideways, and it allows you to either get more surface area with your forefingers and sort of just like squeeze your thumb underneath of it instead of like pinching it normally, or it can also help you get more surface area on sort of a long thumb catch, and then that can actually give you more purchase on a pinch. And this can like be really helpful sometimes. And on that boulder, that the example that I was using, I wouldn't be able to normally like pinch that flat hold because it's just like not, the shape is so bizarre and it's not designed for your thumb. So by turning my thumb like this, it just creates a better, more ergonomic pinch grip actually. And then I was also doing it on the red pinch earlier in the boulder as well. That one, it wasn't as like sort of vital for the sequence, but it helped a bit. But yeah, anyway, that was sort of a rare tip of the day that is probably, it doesn't like come up all the time where you see this sort of grip position. I use it like very rarely, maybe like, I don't know, once every couple months I find a boulder where I really use this, but it can be game changing. And so I stumbled upon that as I was going through my archives, and it was, I was like, oh yes, this is a good one to talk about. Because like I said, I haven't heard of many other people doing this, or at least like knowing about it, because it's so bizarre actually. Anyway, that wrapped up our workout at Boulderhaus. I didn't skip any exercises. Actually, no. I had to stop doing log jump because my hip was kind of tweaked. I tweaked it at Boulderhaus yesterday, just like a little bit, and I didn't want to just do a super aggressive exercise and hurt it. So I skipped long jump. But other than that, we did a nice full workout. I didn't like skip out on any exercises, which is good because I've been skipping workouts a bit lately. But it was nice to do a full one. And so now here is our second session. We rested about 3 hours in between the sessions, and I made my way over to Studio Bloc for endurance. And yeah, I do 5 boulders in this session. I picked some optimistic boulders for sure. Like this one here is definitely going to be the hardest of our endurance boulders. This is a 7. I think it is the first 7 at Studio Bloc we're doing endurance on. Yeah, and I did it once before. It took me like a couple tries, and this is also the first sort of boulder that can fall under the second boulder that we're doing that. Since we've done endurance, that can fall under the category of like a weird endurance boulder. Like obviously this isn't like steep, it's almost like more technical. It has like a pretty powerful sequence with this undercling, and that it gets super pumpy by the end to do the move, like this undercling move a bunch, but it's almost sort of like technical and weird. But like I said, I like to throw like sort of weird boulders in my endurance sessions often because that's what you encounter in competitions, and that's what I'm trying to train my endurance for, is for comp rounds. And then you'll notice on my first try, I had like my beta. That's actually how I sent the boulder initially, is to match the erect and go to the finish hold. But I had to use a jug, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh crap, like I'm not gonna be able to do this like 4 times like with this erect match. So I actually had to improvise some beta here, which is a lot better. It's actually probably intended sequence. And this can actually be something I do with my endurance as well, is pick boulders that you haven't actually attempted before or don't have a lot of experience climbing on, because the element of like figuring out a boulder can add to the pump factor. And that can actually be really applicable, because that's sort of like what happens in the competition, is like you have to figure out a boulder, and sometimes it takes you a long time to do so, and you get like pumped as you're like trying to find a body position. So it's actually a great factor to sort of intentionally include that element into your endurance sessions, is do boulders that you have never even tried before. Sometimes I'll do that, and I do that. The next boulder I had never tried before. And so I was finding that it was like extra difficult. So anyway, the title of this video has to do with skin routine. And I've gotten a couple comments about this, and I keep saying that I'm like meaning to do a video about it. But oftentimes, especially now that we're doing daily videos, I find that I am just not, it's not that I don't have the time to sort of make more sort of like, one-off videos, but it's just the energy and the, and just like the willpower. It's like doing the daily training and making these videos all the time makes me just not want to go and do like a standalone video about a specific topic. And so the direction I think I'm going to be going with these sort of like these questions that I get, or these one-off videos I want to do, like, skin routine, or, sort of like mobility / warm-up routines or like my old workouts, I think what I'm just going to start doing is like using, maybe a less interesting training day, like our workout day and our endurance day or something, and sort of just incorporate like answering these questions and tackling these topics over top of like, sort of like boring and monotonous training that we're just doing regularly, because I find that I just don't have the energy to go, make a COMPCLIMB episode and then, on my rest day, the next day, go and do like a whole nicely filmed video about like my mobility routine or something. It's just, it can be too much. And so I think that I'll just sort of tackle all these elements in the COMPCLIMB series. And that's, that's sort of what it's about as well. Is like the COMPCLIMB series can be anything. It's just like anything to do with me and my climbing. And, my skin has to do with it. And my old mobility exercises have to do with it, all this stuff. So I'll probably just tackle these ideas and topics in the COMPCLIMB series. So today we're going to talk about a bit about my skin routine. So I've mentioned a little bit about this over the episodes, but the sort of like long story short about my skin, like my pads. Basically, in the past, I've had really, really, really bad splits, and I got like chronic splits, and it was like a super dark phase in my climbing. It was like the first instance where I wanted to quit climbing was just because of how bad my splits were getting, and I felt like I was sort of like alone in this. Like they were so bad to the point where it wasn't like normal, and nobody really had any advice for me. And I felt like I was just really like, I wish somebody could have just given me the magical answer. And I sort of had to come up with a bunch. Like I tried a bunch of stuff, and then I was able to figure out something that worked for me. But if somebody just told me this, like back then when it was really bad, it would have been super helpful. And so, the off chance, that someone is experiencing a similar thing and I can give like some helpful advice, I knew just how life-saving it was, like it would have been for me back then. So now, that being said, my skin problem was like quite specific. So basically, when I was getting splits, it wasn't on my fingertip. So it wasn't on sort of like the part of my fingertip that you get like pink skin on when you climb on like fiberglass for a lot. I would get splits just below the fingertip, but also just above sort of the first seam in your finger. So just above this first joint, but below the fingertip, on that sort of like nicely calloused sort of patch of skin. I would get splits there all the time. And what I learned over the years, like the hard way, just from my own personal experience, was that it's because my skin was super thick. Like I just, and that's sort of what I was just assuming. It's not like a doctor told me that or something. I just assumed that I had very thick skin. And what would happen is that if I would climb too much on crimps and just like sort of, edges that sort of target that area of your finger like a lot, it would just like slowly crack and crack and crack, and it would get bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where it would be just big enough that if I grab on a crimp like really hard, it would sort of split all the way open. And now I would have this like fat, like massive cut in my finger, and it was getting to the point where it was on all my fingers, like almost all my fingers. Like my pointer fingers were usually the only ones that were safe, but these back three would just, like the pinky, it would actually sort of be in a different spot. It would be like right on the joint, like sort of, just like right on the joint on the crease of your finger. But then this finger, it would be like in this, like the spot I just described, below the fingertip and above the joint, and then same with the middle finger. And it would get so bad to the point where I had to tape the crap out of them, and even with the tape, it would still feel like a finger injury when I would crimp and my fingers would be bending back, and it would be like opening the split, and it would hurt so bad. And I had to do all these things. Like I ended up having like super glue tape on my fingers, like on all my fingers, because I just had to like stop, like protect the splits. And I obviously everybody's like heard about, oh, you got to sand your skin, and that's sort of supposed to help with this. And so I was doing it, but what I was doing is I didn't know how to sand my skin, so I just like kind of sanded it like half-assed, like, oh, this is supposed to work, right? But it wasn't really working, and the splits kept coming and were getting worse. And basically, I also was using just sort of like the, sort of like climbing brand skin files, like, I don't know, like the Rhino Scans or the Climb On, just these sort of like, like climbing balm companies would usually make like skin files, and I would use those. And I found that those were actually really ineffective. And this is just my opinion, like maybe these can work for somebody, but what I really found helped for me was this. So this is just like some sandpaper. This is like super glued to like a foot file. This is actually like a little craft my little sister made for me. like 2 years ago. This is like 2 years old or something. And quick little fun fact: my little sister Linda is this channel's 1,000th subscriber, and she was trolling me super hard. She said she wouldn't subscribe to the channel unless it like caught her attention. So she was making me work hard for her subscription. And then when we were getting close to 1,000, she was like, you know what? I want to be the 1,000th subscriber, and I want to be the most important subscriber forever. So she like refreshed the thing until it's the 999, and she's the 1,000th subscriber. So shout out to my sister Linda. She also made this little craft, which is it's basically just like, you know, a little sheet of sandpaper, and I just she super glued it to this paddle just so it's easy for me to use. And I wish I knew what the sandpaper was. This was like 2 years ago, so I don't remember. It actually might have been 3 years ago at this point. But it's like medium, I guess. I don't know. It's not like super crazy sharp, but it's also like not like just a little bit sharp. It's like pretty medium. And so what I found is this is just like the ultimate tool. Like this paddle just really was effective for sanding. And so what I do with my skin sanding, so, you know, if you have thick skin, like the sort of thing that I just described, like, you know, sort of just below the fingertip in this sort of region, above the joint, below the fingertip, if you got super thick skin and you're getting splits there, you take your paddle, you take your sandpaper, and you just sand it. And what you want to do is, like, I do this after every session. After every climbing session, I sand my skin. And it can be quite tedious sometimes, actually. But anytime, like, you finish a session and you see those sort of like tiny little micro cuts and micro splits and like dry skin, like just after you finish your session, your skin naturally becomes like this. I take my sandpaper and I just sand them away. And what you want to do is you don't want to sand your fingertip to like or your finger pad to like oblivion and make it like super pink and like hurt. You just want to sand it enough to the point where basically those cuts start to smooth out a bit. And you can tell that they're sort of like becoming more flush with your normal skin. And the more you sand, the smoother your skin gets. And then the less like the split is basically, you can think of like the split as like a layer of skin at the surface of your finger. And if you sand that away, now you're going to get to like the nice connected skin. So this is like really, it's kind of a difficult thing to just describe through a video. Like this is like something that I had to like practice and sort of like have my, you know, trial and error learning process for like, you know, like a good solid year. So I don't think I'm going to like fully be able to tell you how to do this, like, you know, in the best way possible, just through this, like, I don't know, 20-minute video, but maybe I can help. But like, it's just going to take some trial and error. It took me, like, at first I was sanding my skin way too much and it would get actually really thin, like below my fingertip. And it would almost become like, puffy. Like there was like an air bubble and it would be like thin and it was like really bizarre and it would hurt. And because it was like super thin and red because I sanded it too much, but it wouldn't split at all. Like when I sanded it that much, it was like almost impervious to splits because it was so thin. But obviously that creates like different problems of itself. So I had to sand a little bit less. And so then there was like a little bit of a split visible, but like it wouldn't like go crazy into like crazy big cut because, you know, I sanded it just enough. So it's like a very fluid process. You just got to learn. But basically at the end of the day, the moral of the story is I would say get yourself some sandpaper. I find it's more effective than the sort of, you know, climbing, I don't know, branded skin files out there. Maybe I've just not found a good one, but the ones I tried a bunch and I didn't like any of them. I like the sandpaper. And then I just really like, you know, you got to like just practice. And like, if sanding doesn't work for you at the first, it's probably because you need to optimize it. Like that's what happened to me is I was trying to sand my skin and it wasn't working and my splits kept coming, but it was because I wasn't sanding enough. I would like barely sand. I would like kind of rub over my finger a little bit and be like, okay, that's probably good, right? No, you have to feel the difference being made. You got to sand your skin and notice that the cut is and the split is becoming more flush with the skin. It's becoming smooth, but at the same time, you don't want to do it too much. So it's really hard to get the hang of. I dealt with this issue for like a long time and talked to more people that have dealt with it. But yeah, like, and this is also like most people get splits on their fingertips, right? Especially when you're climbing outside. This was just something that I was getting even from climbing inside. And like I said, it's below the fingertip just because I had really thick skin. So if you have thick skin, you got to sand it and you got to sand it properly and you got to learn how to do it properly. And yeah, it just takes some like trial and error, honestly. But anyway, hopefully that helps because I was such a dark time in my climbing career and I know how hard it can be. And so maybe this, you know, can help you out if you're experiencing something similar. But anyway, if you have any questions about that, you can ask me in the comments and maybe I can add on to what I said. I think I covered most of my own experience, but I'm sure I have more to say. Anyway, I wrapped up today's day of training. I had a pretty good workout and endurance session. And then, so what do we got coming up next? Tomorrow's a rest day for me. And then the day after that, we're going to do this competition at Studio Bloc Mannheim, the Fun Cup. And you can expect a video of that in a couple days. So look forward to that. Insert catchy video outro here.